All right. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host today, Samantha Studebaker Carl, and I'm here with my good friends Dan and Kenji and Catherine and Jason. And today we are continuing our discussion of the book Sacred Contracts by Caroline Myss. We are in chapter 2 at the section titled Contracts in Myth. And before we get going with that, I want to give my friends an opportunity to jump out and introduce themselves. And then, Catherine, you can take it with the reading.
Hey guys, Jason from Tampa. Great to be here.
Morning, Dan Sisek in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Kenji, Gorham. I'm just teasing. Me and a goofball.
Good morning. This is
Morning.
Catherine Clement, and we're starting at Contracts in Myth. There are a number of historic precedents for the belief in sacred contracts. The world's scriptures recount God speaking directly to many people, from Adam, Noah, and Jesus in the West, to a wide range of seers and mystics in the East. Yet the divine also sends extraordinary spiritual messengers to get our attention and ensure that we abide by his plan. Messengers who provide guidance and support from the heavens include figures such as the angel Gabriel, who plays a key role in both the Gospels and the Quran, as well as a wide range of anonymous guardian angels, spirits, sylphs, jinn, asuras, fairies, and little people. Spiritual messengers form the basis of much of the world's religious literature, from the angel of the Lord who spoke to Abraham, Jacob, and Muhammad, to the angel Moroni of the Mormons. They relay blessings, warnings, wisdom, and requests to those on earth, either directly through voices and apparitions, or indirectly through dreams or insights that flash through our consciousness, quote, out of the blue. Many people have shared stories with me about divine encounters with angels in which they received profound guidance, comfort, or instructions about how to proceed with their lives. And many people describe angelic interventions in which they are given a warning about something or someone in their lives. I had such an experience years ago while on my way home from work one evening. As I was driving down a main highway in Chicago, I heard a very clear voice tell me, "Slow down. A red truck is going to run the stop sign at the next street." I immediately stepped on the brake, and as I did, a red truck raced through a stop sign not 10 feet in front of me. Only then did I realize that something beyond my own intuition had warned me. Messengers also bring news that is less dramatic but no less life-altering. The 1991 movie Grand Canyon. Just a second. Grand Canyon is a wonderfully rich depiction of everyday angels and life-altering interventions. Written and directed by Lawrence Kasdan, the film weaves together several plots in which apparently innocent synchronicities bring people together in ways that change their lives. One of the main characters, Claire, played by Mary McDonnell, finds an abandoned baby under a bush when she goes on her daily run and slightly alters her usual route. She is convinced that she was meant to find and care for this baby, and says so to her skeptical husband, Mac, played by Kevin Kline. Some kind of connection has been made, she says, and it has to be played out. When Mac tries unsuccessfully to change her mind and then tries to end the discussion by saying that his head hurts, Claire refuses to allow it, saying memorably, it's just an inappropriate response. Get a headache in the presence of a miracle. Mac later recalls a miracle of his own. One morning, when he was about to cross a busy Los Angeles street, a hand reached out and suddenly pulled him back to the curb. Just then, a bus rumbled by right in front of him, and he realized that his life had been spared. An event, he says, that literally changed everything for me. Looking around, he sees that the woman who grabbed him back from the curb is smiling and wearing a Pittsburgh Pirates cap. The Pirates happen to be Mac's favorite team, He even named his son after pirates great Roberto Clemente. And he realizes that this cannot be simple coincidence. That's not your usual thing at 9 a.m. on Wilshire Boulevard. A woman in a Pittsburgh Pirates baseball cap, he says. It's a little suspicious. The events in the film remind me of the true life story of Maureen, a newly married woman in her early 30s who developed a tumor in her ovaries and had to have a hysterectomy. Realizing that she could never bear children plunged her into a depression so intense that both her parents and her husband feared that she might attempt suicide. Besides her own grief over the loss of her ability to conceive, Maureen feared that her marriage would eventually disintegrate because she knew how much her husband wanted children. I had believed from the time I was a child that I was meant to be a mother, she told me when we met some years later. I could not imagine a future other than as a wife and mother. After the operation, it was as if my life had ended. In fact, a part of my life did end. I no longer felt the same about anything. I remember going out with my mom about 3 months after the surgery and spotting a woman with twin girls, 2 years old and absolutely darling. I had never felt such envy and rage. I wanted to run up to her and shake her and tell her she was living the life I was meant to have. Then, one night, Maureen had a visitation from an angel. Even though I was asleep, she said, I was also awake. It's very difficult to describe my state of consciousness. I saw this beautiful angel just as I saw this beautiful angel sitting at the foot of my bed. She asked me, "Why are you so sad?" I told her, and I had made a mistake in taking on this lifetime. This was not what I wanted, and the pain was too great. She replied, "There is no reason for you to feel such despair. I've come to tell you that tomorrow you will meet your son." I looked at her and replied, "That's impossible." But she said, "Oh, is that so? You have not made a mistake in accepting this life, and your passion to be a mother was not given to you to cause such pain. Your agreement is meant to be fulfilled differently than you expected, that's all." Then the angel told her to go back to sleep. The next day felt like a dream fog to Maureen, who did not remember her dream when she first awoke. She wasn't sure what had happened, except that she sensed something was different. The phone rang about 10 in the morning. She said, "A friend of mine named Lynn, whom I hadn't spoken with in a long time, called to tell me that she was now running an adoption center." I couldn't bring myself to tell her what I had been through, but just listened as she explained that she found her work both satisfying and heartbreaking. "I mean," she said, "we are now looking for a home for this sweet little baby boy whose mother doesn't want anything to do with him." Instantly, Maureen replied, "I'll take him. He's supposed to be with me. He is my son." Lynn paused and said, "Okay, let's start the paperwork. That must be the reason I thought about calling you." Then the dream exploded into my mind, Maureen told me. It wasn't a dream. My angel had really come during the night to bring me the message that I was about to have a baby. I just had no idea I was pregnant. Without a doubt, we are surrounded by our angels, invisible beings of light who guide us through the mysteries of our lives. Maureen did have a contract to be a mother, and when the time was right, the delivery took place. Ancient cultures believed that angelic messages come from a higher source, God or gods, who have a history of communicating such warnings and requests. Several of these cultures were shaped in part by their belief in a system of cosmic order imposed by a deity. In their universe, individuals were expected to serve the will of that god, or at least to be under his supervision. The Aryans, who invaded India and established a Vedic religion, the forerunner of Hinduism, in the Indus Valley around the 2nd millennium BC, called their god of order Mitra. In Persia, which had been invaded by other groups of Aryans, this deity was called Mithra. Centuries later, the ancient Romans called him Mithras. Common to all these three conceptions of this god force was the belief that all humans had contracts with heaven and were obligated to abide by these contracts. In his book, Mithras, D. Jason Cooper writes that the contract offered by the Aryan Mitra was not between equals, but Mitra was a just lord. Both sides had certain obligations. Mitra oversaw the affairs of his worshippers. He established justice for them. In return, his worshippers had to be upright in their dealings with others. Mitra was thus lord of the contract. According to the Rig Veda, the oldest sacred text of India, Mitra, whose name derives from an Indo-European root that translates as both friend and contract, was a fair god who took care of his followers. As the Lord of Justice, however, Mitra determined punishment as well as reward, and so expected people to complete all of the tasks assigned to them in an honorable manner. Because Mitra oversaw the activities of all humanity, he was also called the god of 10,000 eyes, able to observe and hear from his place in the heavens every conceivable action, from conversations held in small corners to participation in mass social rituals. Mitra was everywhere, constant reminder to his devotees of the need to be and do what the gods expected of them. For all that, Mitra was not a threatening god, but one whose power lay in creating order and balance. Although he punished wrongdoers, he also had the capacity to forgive repentant humans, perhaps along with Yahweh, the first god who rewarded penitence. Hey, I'm trying to read here. Within the Persian culture, Mithra also oversaw the contracts of humankind. In a yasht, go lay down. Go lay down, baby. Go lay down. Go lay down. In a yacht or a hymn dedicated to Mithra in the Zoroastrian scripture known as the Avesta, he is frequently referred to as the one who calls people to account. Like Mithra was considered a moral god, judging contracts not only between individuals, between nations as well. Mithra punished those who broke their agreements, did not fulfill obligations, and lived immorally. His punishments could include anything from the curse of a disease to death from a weapon. Mithra supported a well-organized, fair government and acted destructively toward people in power who harmed their own people. Mithra was also thought to be the judge of those whose commoners could not judge, their kings and other lofty rulers. No human being was above his wrath. It was Mithra who established truth as supreme among his worshippers. The ancient Indians, Persians, Greeks, and Romans were not the only peoples who believed that the gods watched over humans, kept accounts, and controlled human destiny. One of the principal deities of Norse mythology, for instance, is Var, the goddess of contracts and marriage agreements. Var is said to listen to marriage vows and compacts between men and women and to take revenge against any who break their vows. In the Mesoamerican region, around the turn of the second millennium, the Toltecs and Aztecs worshipped a god named Tezcatlipoca, associated with the destruction like the highly rewarded Indian deities Shiva and Kali. Tezcatlipoca ruled the night sky, moon, and stars. He presided over the cosmic ball court, which the Aztecs saw as the constellation of Gemini, and where the gods played a game to set the fate of humankind. Tezcatlipoca was also the protector deity of slaves and punished anyone who harmed them. His name means smoking mirror, and as a master of black magic, he was often depicted with a black stripe across his face, or a black mirror made of obsidian or hematite on his chest, in which were reflected all the thoughts and actions of humanity. From the historical records of Mithra, we cannot tell how people were supposed to recognize their life contracts or how they might have been revealed to them. Perhaps those contracts obligated people to a certain class, or perhaps a contract was thought of as a way of participating in a lifelong mystery that unfolded one step at a time. Nor is there any clear indication that people believed that their contracts had been agreed to prior to birth, or that they had any role or freedom in choosing their life's work. To find the earliest known account of that addresses those subjects, we have to look to Greece in the 4th century.
Let's, Catherine, let's start there because this starts into the
Okay.
section that talks about Plato, and it looks like then these next couple of, till the rest of it has a lot to do with that. So
Okay.
we do that, and that'll leave about the same amount to read next week. So let me make a note here. Okay. What's everybody think about this section so far?
I like it.
Interesting of the idea of the contracts going back so far, that it's not such a, it's until we did that one book, what was it, Leap of Faith or whatever, that one book, or Your Soul Contract, those, when we were doing those.
The Big Leap, or
Oh yeah,
Hmm.
that I'd even ever come across that, and I thought it was kind of something kind of new. But in hearing how she researched and found information that goes back to that far, that the idea of contracts is not a new idea, and that's interesting how it's, I'm not going to say prevalent, but it seems to be a lot more of a thought process with humanity than I think is really projected or put out there in the mainstream, if you kind of follow what I'm getting at. And that it just makes me think, because of my own beliefs, I believe, even in my beliefs, I believe that I came here with a purpose. There's a purpose and a meaning to my life, and I'm trying to figure out fully what that is, because I don't fully know what it's not inherent or right there in plain sight. So I mean, I'm still trying to figure that out too. So it's interesting, and makes you really think about how do we come up with this sense that we have a purpose, or that we are here for more than just being here, because it seems very innate and very engulfed in our minds and psyche, in our lives, that we have something more here that we're supposed to be doing than just existing.
Yeah, I thought it was just interesting in the beginning of this section where she talks about so many different, let's see, well, it was just saying so many different mystics and belief systems, and all of them, they're listing off all of these different ones from the Gospels and the Quran, and the guardian angels, spirits, sylphs, jinn, asuras, fairies, and little people, just from all the different cultures, all seem to have that same message that, we're here for a purpose. It's been fascinating to me over the years, having been raised strictly on the King James Bible version or similar versions of the Bible, and that whole upbringing in Christianity, because back then everybody was like, this is the word, this is the only word, there is no other word, and this is what we believe, and everybody else is wrong. And yet everything that I've learned since then about all of these different religions or spiritual beliefs or cultural ways of being that have kind of a higher message, they all kind of seem to say the same thing, and so there's got to be some truth in that, right? Either that or it's just this is humanity's way of dealing with being human and hoping there's something more to it. So I don't know. It's just fascinating how when you really look at the core message of so many of these different things, they're all saying the same thing. And it makes me wonder sometimes, why are we so against each other in in the religious communities? Why are there so many wars fought over what my God believes or what my beliefs are about God versus your beliefs about God? It it isn't the core belief to me. I think it's more the religious rituals that are the things that get everybody all wound up. I don't know.
Well, you got to remember those people that were out there with the little incense waving and doing all this. They had no clue what they were doing. They made it up as they were going. Bunch of bullshit. Sorry.
That's okay. Well, and I think that there was a whole but like with the Catholic Church back in the, those earlier years is where they were just trying to control everything that everybody did. And so they
Right.
used a lot of those rituals to do that. So I suppose it makes sense that people would rebel against that baloney because it's just ritualistic mumbo jumbo versus a true message from the beyond.
Well, I can give another example too. Like for me, I'm Christian, I believe, but a lot of what I believe came out of the Jewish background. Christianity was born out of a lot of the Jewish history and stuff and things like that with different, but going back to like with, the Jews and stuff with the Sadducees and Pharisees, which are part of their historical, they had their, I've learned recently that there were over like 618 or something like that laws telling you how to live and act, and 300, or no, 300 something laws of how to act and be a proper Jew, I guess. That's how I'll put it. And then they had another 200 or something odd number of laws that, in order to be that, were brought up in order to ensure that you fell within those. And these were the punishments. And it's like, with so many restrictions, how can you not? But you're not going to keep everything. And that kind of goes along with like the Catholic, a lot of things. And I don't think that, well, I think there's a place for certain aspects like within what I believe, and I'm not going deep into that, but to try and just, okay, you got to do this, but if you don't, like one of them, you couldn't do certain things on Sundays, like, you can't work, but yet if you're a horse or donkey or whatever, your means of how you fell in a ditch or something, are you not going to go out there and help it or take care of it or whatever? If somebody's hurt on the side of the road, are you not? It just flabbergasts me on some of these things that, and I think you're right. I think that's where people just get so fed up with the dogma and the hamstring of living and trying to, as I believe, live according to what I believe with the God I believe in, infinite intelligence, the universe, however you look at that. It's because I don't believe to that depth that you can't do that because this is what we tell you. There are some things that make sense that I've got to, even if it's like back in the day when they were so agricultural or dependent on their animals and their oxen and their mules and donkeys for, doing the work, a lot of the work that they did. To me, it just, it's, and I do get it why people, bulk at it and, kind of do the proverbial FU.
I mean, a lot of Christianity dates back to, the bubonic plague and back into times of old England when people just died and they had no idea why they died. And so, you had religious leaders who, stepped up, and of course it was sin or it was something that you did that caused your death. They didn't know what bacteria was. They didn't understand why things like that happen. So, and I think that they developed a lot of some of the traditions that you're talking about. Like I think about Ring Around the Posy, and then where that song comes from. And there's a lot of references to those things in religious texts. But I like the days, we talk about the American Indian that was not monotheistic. They worshiped the wind, the sun, the deer. Everything was worshipful, and I kind of like that. Think God is in everything. Kind of.
Yeah, I think a lot of those, like what you're saying, those rituals and whatnot that were developed back in those early centuries, like, you couldn't just tell the peasants, go wash your hands. It had to be something where you had to strike the fear of God in them, because they wouldn't listen. So I imagine that a lot of it was, that kind of a thing. And because I was thinking a lot of times those big the religious organizations, the whole point at those times in the earlier days was to control the people. And if you didn't have some thing beyond the initial right now, people wouldn't listen. It's where all the superstitions come from and all of that mumbo jumbo that, it just, instead of people recognizing that, oh, okay, we've discovered that there's this, we've discovered that if you don't wash your hands and you've just wiped your butt, now you're eating food, you might
Could be
get
bad.
sick. Nobody puts two and two together like that. No, it has to be, oh, God's going to smite you if you don't do, or whatever.
You've been smitten.
You've been smitten. But I mean, it's funny to me. I don't know. It's all funny to me sometimes when you think back in those times and how it was that they would get the people to cooperate in such a way, and it was using these methods of operation. So, but I mean, nowadays when we can look back and we can see all those different things, if we're the type of person that will look at and see the correlations between one religion and another, or one spiritual belief and another, and be able to recognize that there is like some good messages in there. It's just caught up in a lot of mumbo jumbo ritualistic stuff. And if we could all just get past some of that stuff, that we all are basically believing a lot of the same things. So it's fascinating to me. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Catherine.
I think, well, I think being native there, I had between being native and being sent off to every church to try to save my heathen butt when I was a little kid, I saw, even as a child, I saw the truth that was being taught in the different, because I was sent to synagogue, I was sent to every kind of Baptist or Episcopalian or, Catholic. I was sent to all of the churches. And so even at like 5 and 6 years old, I was able to see that there was this underlying truth amongst all of them. And then there was all this bullshit that, each one laid on top of that truth. And I think I had I don't know, I think when you're born into a culture, whatever that culture is, somehow you get like memories of your ancient ancestors or something. I don't know, because I was sort of born with a disdain towards Christianity, because they brought that in to control and destroy our culture. They cut our hair, they took our hair, they took our language, they took our gods, they took everything, our way of life. And it was in my mind and feeling and whatever genetic memories I have, I laid all that at the foot of Christianity rather than at the people who were teaching that. But I held that disdain for many, many years of my life. And even when I was getting visual and auditory assistance from beyond, I refuse to believe, like I refuse to believe in angels. Gosh, up until not really all that long ago, maybe a decade ago or so, when I was finally okay, I mean, I knew that there were things out there helping me, but because angels were so associated in my mind only to Christianity, I wasn't open to them. So I think, it's not, quote, Christianity that's bad. It was the people and how they used those teachings to control others, like you said, Samantha.
Yeah, to wage wars against that. That was something that, when I was in the midst of my deepest belief, being way back when I was a Christian and I just believed whatever they told me, it was one thing. But then when I got older and I started recognizing all of the mumbo jumbo and all of this, all the wars and all of the pain that those religions had caused so many different cultures, and the struggle that I was having internally, going, this is not right, this doesn't feel right, this, how can we say on one hand to do unto others as we'd have done to ourselves, and then on the other hand be slapping people in the face for believing what they believe, just was such a contradiction to me. And throughout my elementary school lives, I saw so many of those contradictions, particularly in people's behaviors, where they were saying that we're better than thou, and yet acting the other way, acting that they're not, and but you see that a lot in so many different, I mean, history is the slap in the face right there that shows you that so many of these religious organizations, it's not necessarily the religion, obviously it's not the belief system and all that, but it is the way that they wielded that with the people to motivate them to destroy other people, or to motivate them to do, conform to a certain way of being or whatever. And that's why I was just railing against religion for such a long time. And it wasn't really until I got with you guys and we started studying more things about internal development, and we looked, I had read a couple of different books leading up to the Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Living the Wisdom of the Tao. But when we read that book, that changed my perspective on everything. And that was when I recognized, okay, well, these messages that these religions are trying to teach us, the underlying messages versus the surface stuff, the surface rules and rituals. It's the underlying messages that are all the same, and it's the people in control that are they're just oblivious to those messages, and they're just all about the rituals so that they can control the people. That's my thoughts on it. But because there's definitely some benefits in having spiritual beliefs to and recognizing these underlying messages and seeing how they actually play out in your life and getting these messages from the beyond. I think that those are hugely important. So
Yeah, it's interesting. Going back to Catherine, it's funny how you said you never really believed in angels, and I have, I think I've always believed in angels. Um, I know one incident when I was young. I don't remember the whole thing or anything. I know that one moment in my life, I'm almost sure I dealt with an angel. I have never told anybody this ever because I've never wanted to deal with people's thoughts or ideas or that. I just felt, okay, I believe it. I know it happened, and I'm just gonna keep it that way. And and it was meant, but it was meant for me. Whatever came out of that, I don't remember a whole lot about it. I know it happened, and it was in a very particular point when I was back, with my real mom and stepdad. Um, but I believe it happened. I believe, so I've always believed, and I've always wanted to have that interaction again. And I may have, and I just have never really zeroed in on it or whatever. So I've always believed. So I believe that, God, the universe, whatever, I do believe that there's not necessarily, I've never heard an audible voice, but I believe that I get these senses or feelings or ideas, and I, you know, go with that as best I can. But and I agree with you in a lot of ways, Samantha, that my beliefs, I believe, are strong, good. I believe them. I hold fast to them. They guide my life. I don't always live up to them, but but I can look and see where sometimes man has overlaid his imprint or what he thinks is meant to be done with this, rather than realizing that this came from God, Creator, universe, infinite intelligence, and that is for everybody, and it's meant for everybody, and it's their way, his way, of trying to bring everything back to in communion or reconciliation or in agreement with it, for that, and to uh, help me, so that way when I pass from this earthly vessel, my body, back to, and I believe I will go back to rejoin that I will be, back where ultimately where I want to be and where I belong.
That's interesting word you ended that with, wanting to belong.
Well, it wasn't the thought I was trying to convey, but it to where my soul or my spirit originally came from, So to be back in, maybe the better way to say it is completion or full, or I can't say the word in that in my head. I get my picture that I'm, but um,
Yeah, I was just thinking though, you just that word kind of sums up a lot of like why we want to know understand the meaning of things, and we want to belong as beings. We desperately want to understand, and then we also want to know where we belong and be there. Be a part of it.
well, I think in a sense of maybe the way I'm thinking of it is not belong like I belong to this group or to that, but where I am fully manifested in what my purpose or my why I'm exist, but in the sense that I know my spirit, my soul and spirit will go on forever. But while I'm here, I'm not fully.
Like, how do I fit? What's my piece? What's my piece of, or how does my piece of the puzzle fit into the grand scheme of things? Kind of.
Yeah,
Right.
once I move on from this, because this is one aspect of it. I'm, even though I might feel that my 70, 80, 90, 100 years is a long time, but in the brief scheme of things throughout, the cosmos, it goes on right now for as far as I know, forever until I pass from here to find out really, what it is.
Sure.
Because I believe that I have a connection, but I'm not fully connected, if you understand what I'm saying, and that I'm not fully manifested, or I'm not fully. I can't get the right.
That's okay. I wasn't trying to put you on the spot. I was just thinking that
No, but
word holds a lot of weight with everybody, I think. That's all.
well, no, but you're right, because it's not really the word that I'm trying to encompass, but I think at the time it was the best word I could use that I think everybody kind of understood.
Yeah, I understand it. Sure. Yeah, I understand it completely. What do you guys think that this passage is mostly about, this section?
I don't know. I think it's mostly about just trying to like. I think she's trying to get the point across that all of these different types of seers in the past are all kind of saying the same thing, that we have this contract with, from the spiritual side to the human side, that we're supposed to fulfill in some way, and that they all talk about this, all these gods of the contract, if you will, are the ones that are helping us recognize our purpose. If we say that our contract is our purpose, kind of help and guide us along the path of fulfilling our purpose or fulfilling our contract. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. She's trying to just let us know, is everybody saying the same thing? So wake up and see it. Something like that.
Right. I
Interesting.
think it's meant exactly for what it did for Dan.
Yeah.
Dan thought that sacred contracts were a new age belief, a new age concept, and they're not new age at all. They're old age.
Yeah, there was that part in there where she was talking about the woman who had to have the hysterectomy, and she had felt throughout her whole life that she was supposed to be a mother. And when she had the hysterectomy, it just tore her apart, literally, as well as figuratively. And she thought that she had no purpose. It's to the point where she was feeling like she wanted to commit suicide. And yet then she had this angel, was it an angel or just a messenger in her sleep, came to her and just told her, look, you're still going to be a mother. You're just going to fulfill this in a different way. And then all of a sudden she's got relief and she's like, oh, okay, I hadn't thought about that. And isn't that funny how so much of the time we get ourselves so wound up about the coulda, woulda, shouldas or supposed tos that we get this kind of narrow vision of what we think our life's supposed to be. And because of that narrow vision, we can't see any of the other possibilities. And so I was left wondering after that part of, or not left wondering, more of a reminder to me of, hello, yes, you may be railing against this, that, or the other that's happening in your life, but maybe you need to see something that you haven't opened your eyes up to yet. That is the reason for this and all of that, that is guiding you to what you ultimately will be in resonance with, if you will. So, but guys, we are at the top of the hour, so final thoughts, then we got to wrap up. Catherine, I know you've got to jump off for another thing, and I do too here directly as well. But I want to give everybody an opportunity to share final thoughts before we go.
This was an interesting little section because, like I said, I will say this. Maybe I believe that the idea of sacred contracts probably has always, in a roundabout way, been around. I had just never put that emphasis on it about there until, and thinking that was more current. But in retrospect, in thinking about it now, it makes sense that if we're thinking this now and feeling it now, why wouldn't the mankind back then have felt those same things? So it only makes sense that, it's probably something that has been around. I just never put it in that context. And it's interesting how this, at first, when I was first listening to this, I didn't think I was going to get a lot or think a lot about this, but as we got into it more, it brought out a lot, made me think a little bit more, and kind of not reevaluate, but kind of reorient some of my thoughts on some things.
Yeah, well, once again, it was a very good reading, and I appreciate you guys. My last thought is just that kind of like what someone was saying to me, or part of what someone was saying to me, that they believe that everyone's destiny is their own, of their own making or choosing. We have a lot of possibilities, and like whatever you're going through, if you can just take a step back, and if you find that you're stuck and can't go forward with what you really wanted to begin with, that there is another really positive opportunity out there for you if you give it a chance. So you just you know focus on all the great good possibilities that could that you could make to be your destiny, and focus on them moving forward. Love you guys.
Great discussion.
Awesome, guys. Everybody have an awesome, amazing week. And if you're out there watching this on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe to our channel so you can get updated each time we upload a new video. If you'd like to participate with us, you can find Mindset Mastery Collective on Facebook And that way you can connect with any one of us in there and participate if you'd like. So with that, have a great, awesome, amazing week. And we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.